Oh, hi guys. Welcome to the latest episode of Cricket Draft Insights. I'm currently riding pretty high in the men's T20 Blast. I'm around 53rd and I'm up to, I think, was it 160th in the women's. Had a really good week last week, courtesy of Captain Charlie Knott, but it's a very tricky week this week. There's only about four teams playing, bit of uncertainty, particularly around Yorkshire. And I'm trying my best to make sure I get all my star all-rounders back in next week. So fortunately, Yorkshire start out too. So we'll see what happens there because I'm not very confident in a couple of players playing. But I'm trying to get the players playing who might play next week, even though I'm not confident they'll play. Anyway, the point of today's video is I thought I'd have my two pennies worth regarding the England team. Obviously, a lot of people speculating about the England team, about some changes, and I'll just tell you what I think the England team should be for the next test. Okay. So I'm going to stick with Ben Duckett at the top of the order. In my pre-Twitter days, I did tell people, or at least talk to myself in my head, that I always thought Ben Duckett could be our David Warner, score quickly, just take the game away from the opposition in a session. He's obviously had a bit of a wobble, probably for about a year, but there have been signs recently. He did well when he was playing for Nottinghamshire. Got run out one innings, didn't he? But then he got some runs. So I think we're definitely backing him. You know, he's still very capable, scores quickly, and I'd be sticking with him at the top of the order. And then it might seem harsh, but I'm ditching Emilio Gay, and I am going back to Dom Sibley. So Sibley and Hamid are probably a similar comparison. You know, I can think outside the box. There was a time in certain circumstances I was thinking about Will Jacks opening. Hamid probably scores a bit quicker now, but I also think that brings some vulnerability. I don't really conform to the notion that Dom Sibley got dropped because he scored too slowly. He did get dropped in the end because he just wasn't scoring any runs. Now, obviously, you have to decide, is someone just a good county player, a bit better than the rest, or have they improved and they're more suited to Test cricket? I don't actually know the answer about Sibley, but what I think would work, I just think it'd be a nice contrast for Duckett, whilst he's scoring quickly, and I think Sibley can just help us bat for 5 days. And when England pick players, they should just tell them you are picked to be you, okay? Not to be anything else. Go back to Nick Compton, yeah? Confusing and what Trevor Bailey said. You pick Sibley to be Sibley. The game lasts 5 days, and I'm going to talk about a spin bowler later, okay? Keep the opposition in the field. So Duckett and Sibley up top, and I stick with Jacob Bethel at 3. Yeah, Jacob Bethel would probably be good if he played a bit more domestic cricket, a bit more 4-day cricket under his belt. But he has generally made a score in 1 innings, okay? And he clearly is in that bracket of X Factor player. So I'd be sticking with Bethel, and his bowling is particularly, well, not particularly, but relevant depending on selection scenario, because he can bowl left-arm spin. Now, Joe Root is at 4. Obviously, a lot of people love Joe Root. You know me, I like my differentials, and there's part of me wants to think ahead about a post-Joe Root era. But Joe Root's still around, so he stays at 4. Harry Brook at 5, and he probably is captain. I'm just focusing on the Test squad now. But in the white ball squads, maybe we would go to Sam Curran as captain, just to avoid Brook being captain across the board. As much as anything, just like all the post-match interviews and stuff, like does wear people down. Right, 6 is where it gets slightly interesting. So I'm going to say Ed Barnard, right? Obviously, Higgins isn't fully fit. Well, not fit at all. I want players picked at the peak, right? So I'm not picking Sam Curran. In the past, I would have definitely said Sam Curran because I really want some left-arm variety. And I do think he's an X-Factor player, okay? Obviously, a lot of people, one of those players, a lot of people just write him off. He has, he does have X-Factor. He's got it in him to turn the game, okay? And I would be backing him, but I just don't think he's quite at his peak having come back from bowling. So I'm saying Ed Barnard. Now, there's part of me wanted to have another batter here. And I'm going to come to Charlie Allison and Kieran Carlson in a bit, okay? But because I really want a spinner and want to avoid just having the 4 pacers, whereas I could put Carlson and I could have, say, Bethel and Carlson can bowl a bit, generally I want to back an actual spinner. So I do feel you need the other bowler. And I do think Barnard, first and foremost, a batter. I'd have Barnard at 6. I then have John Simpson at 7, okay? Obviously, we've had a few wicket-keeping options around the squad. And James Smith did score 60, I appreciate, in the last innings. Did show a bit of fight there, good to see. But he's obviously had a horror show behind the stumps. I go John Simpson. I know some people look at that and say a stopgap or whatever. I still think he is the number 1 wicket-keeper, okay? I don't think that's ever been in doubt for a long time. And historically, it was that he didn't score enough runs. And Ben Cox is another one who I'd talk about and would maybe be considered if we were going on tour, though Ollie Pope is the other player I was going to talk about as well. But for me, John Simpson, he's still like elite fitness, has improved with the bat. I'd have John Simpson keeping wicket at 7, at least for this year, okay? And it allows some of us to potentially develop at domestic level or for some communication about who's actually keeping wicket. And clearly, I like players to prove themselves. I could talk about England Lions as well. But there's also talented players coming through. And okay, Joe Moores, Tom Rue, but call me old-fashioned, but let's give them a bit more experience. I'd go Simpson. And then on to the bowlers, right? So I'm going Liam Patterson-White. There was a year or two ago where he was really struggling, dried up, not taking any wickets. He's fought back superbly, takes a lot of wickets. He can bat a really like left-arm variety, whether that's a left-arm pacer or a spinner, right? Jack Carson's in the mix for me if we're going on tour as an off-spinner, okay? Talk about Rehan Ahmed, leg spinner. I'd want all bases covered if we're going on tour. But just at home now, I'd go Patterson-White. I then have Robinson. So Atkinson, Robinson, Archer and Tongue, okay? I think all those players deserve to stay in. I think they were a little unfortunate with some of the fielding. I think they've all got, between 50 and 100 wickets, decent averages. Most of them can bat a bit. I probably leave Tongue out the first test just because did he play all 3? And the others missed some if Robinson's fit. I'll use that as an excuse to omit Tongue for the first test, but then we'd rotate. If the conditions were really, really wet, so the other players I'm going to mention in the squad, I was kind of between Allison and Carlson, right? I do think Allison is a big deal and basically should be picked at 4. Well, if Root wasn't around, 4 across formats, right? So I want that consistency. But then if I was putting him at 6, Allison, but then Carlson can bowl a bit, blah, blah, blah. But basically between Allison and Carlson, say, in the squad. But what I might do is I'd have Allison in the squad, right? So Barnard plays, and I'd say I've omitted Tongue. Allison and Tongue on the bench then, right? But the pacers get rotated. But say get to the second test. I know there's that thing of, well, who do you think is next in line? And if somebody steps on the ball just before play, you want them to play. But I'd maybe have Allison in the squad. Then the second test, I'd have Carlson. Then I might go back to Allison. Because I may have said this before, but I always feel like in the Jake Ball days, there was a couple of years he started superbly for Nottinghamshire in the England squad. He's in the squad, stops playing, then he gets a chance, and he doesn't do very well because he's not played for a while. So what I don't want is people being carried in the squad to not play. You have to manage that. Okay. Just as a side note, as I hinted upon, I do think the England Lions, obviously sometimes it clashes, and I think they have to be smart and strategic. I think the England Lions, it's been more of a development squad in recent time. People like Mitchell Stanley, who had no experience, was getting picked all the time. Mitchell Stanley provided some substance. Great to see. People talk about the next best. You can start throwing in older players, Carlson, Abel, etc. I just think it should be a mix, and strategic maybe, dependent on what the county fixtures are, of players who've proven themselves at county level. Carlson is obviously one I'd always use as an example, because people might still look at his figures, say they're not quite amazing, but they are actually over the last few years, and he's gone into Division 1 and done better. Allison's done really well. I don't think Allison's has an exhaustive England youth career. And then, you might have a few slightly rawer ones. Josh Hull, he's got some experience now. Thomas Rue has obviously come through. It'd be a mix of the players who've proven themselves over a few years at domestic cricket and a few slightly more less experienced who you do think have the attributes. And now I've got talking, I'm even thinking about some of the white ball selections. Somebody like Matt Taylor, I think really merits an opportunity, left arm. But maybe I'll talk about white ball squads again in the future. But anyway, to reiterate, my test squad in the immediacy for England. Next test, I'd have Ben Duckett, Dom Sibley, Jacob Bethel, Joe Root, Harry Brook, Ed Barnard, John Simpson, Gus Atkinson, Ollie Robinson, Jofra Archer. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Liam Patterson-White at 8. And then I'd have Allison and Tongue in the squad. And then the pacers would be rotated. Tongue would come in. Allison I'd manage. And I'd maybe have Carlson. And if it was ultra wet, ultra damp conditions, might even leave out Barnard, leave out Patterson-White, play the other spinner, play 4 pacers, and play the extra batter. But generally, I'd like to be backing spin. As I said, the other way you could go, I haven't written off Ollie Pope, okay? He's only 28 and he does have 9 test hundreds. Okay, Matt, not done too well in Australia. talk of him captain. He has kept wicket. I wouldn't write off Ollie Pope, but I have gone new there with Allison and Carlson. If you're going on a winter tour, definitely taking Jack Carson, okay, as another spin option, who can bat a bit too. That's the thing, just if some people were worried about the tail, for me, I haven't got a problem. Even if you had Atkinson 8, Atkinson, Robinson, Archer, Tongue, cumulatively, they must average about 60 or so with the bat. I believe Archer should score more runs. Atkinson has done deceptively well. Robinson can bat. And I also think, as much as I'd love to come in here and tear it up and say Jamie Porter, Ethan Bamber, I do think these guys, like I said, they've all taken, 50 plus wickets. Archer's average is a little high, but I think he's been unfortunate with the drops. And the other guys are averaging like mid-20s, low 20s with the ball. Don't worry about the batting. You back the batters to bat. I still think Simpson's good down at 7. And you back those guys to be the best bowlers, so they dismiss the opposition for a bit less. So even if on paper they don't look as good at batting from 8, I'm not as bothered. I don't think that's what you should be concerning yourself with. Also, just thinking out loud here, the way I believe the England team should be structured, the selector, there should be a selector who picks the team. He should then have sort of scouts, right? Who are not yes people, who are people going to challenge him, right? And they discuss, they pick a team. They then go to the captain, and the captain says, thanks, great squad, but you picked 3 left-arm pacers. I think we need an extra batter. I've played against this lad. I think he's good. Can we have him? That's what I'd do. Selector picks the squad with some input from some others contributing, goes to the captain, says this is your squad, allows the captain to have a bit of input, maybe make a change or 2, then have the squad. The coach, not his concern. Okay, I don't need a big name as a coach. You've got yourself into an international cricket squad. I expect you to be able to bat and bowl. Okay, so the coach for me is not a big deal. The selector and the captain work together, communicate. They pick the squad and they pick the 11. The coach keeps things ticking over. I'm basically just a consultant. Okay, I know there's this attitude of, oh, well, a player wouldn't want to talk to the coach about their technical concerns or whatever. No, you're just somebody there to put the cones out and throw the ball and keep it ticking over and have a bit of a chat. Okay. So for me, the coach role is overrated and doesn't need to be a big name. Okay. The captain and the selector work together. Okay. Those are my thoughts on the England Test squad. Let me know. This causes some controversy. I said in the last video, didn't I, about people who don't follow county cricket. Not a criticism. People got busy lives. It's the same for, I've watched cricket on TV, and it's sometimes very obvious that ex-England players see a county player, an experienced county player, and they've never encountered this player before. But fair enough, because if they're working on the international games, and they've got their lives and their family and their appointments, I don't expect you to watch every ball of county cricket. And the same goes for fans. We've got busy lives. Okay, it's not a criticism when I'm saying that people don't follow county cricket. But how many comments? Ben Folkes. Ben Folkes is injured, right? He's injured. Okay. Is he even the best wicket keeper? I'm not entirely convinced. Okay, and if he's batting down at 7, I know we're saying, well, let's pick the best wicket keeper. I'm not convinced he's suited to batting down the order. Anyway, I just keep adding to same video. Duckett, Sibley, Bethel, Root, Brook, Barnard, Simpson, Patterson-White, Atkinson, Robinson, Archer. On the bench, Allison/Carlson, Tongue, and then rotated. Okay, let me know your thoughts. Let me know who'd be in your England squad. Thank you very much for watching. How's that?